So today we're looking at community from another perspective, the ignoble and the noble community. So shall we begin? Ready, ready? Ready, steady? Yay. Okay. So monastics, let's say, because this is talking about monastic community, but of course it can apply to any community. There are these two kinds of communities. What two? The community of the noble and the community of the ignoble. And what is the community of the ignoble? Ignoble? Ignoble. The community in which the monastics do not understand as it really is. This is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. And this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. This is called the community of the ignoble. And what is the community of the noble? The community in which the monastics understand as it really is. This is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. And this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. This is called the community of the noble. There are these two kinds of communities. Of these two kinds of communities, the community of the noble is foremost. So in a sense then, this is also another definition of what it means to be an Arya, to be a noble person. In other words, anybody from stream entry upwards. So for the stream winner, they're defined as somebody who's actually seen into these Four Noble Truths very, very deeply and seen the pervasive nature of suffering. It's not only to see that there is some suffering, but it's to see suffering parinyayatam or parinyatam, which means basically completely, to see the entire breadth and depth and width and span of suffering. And that's what really differentiates a noble person from someone still who hasn't really seen into it deeply. And when you see into the first noble truth deeply, you also simultaneously understand the cause of that suffering, the origin, the arising, and also its cessation and the path, because obviously we have to practice the path in order to see the suffering to its very depth. So that's quite lovely, isn't it? Another definition, in a sense, of a noble person, of a stream winner. Or a stream enterer, if I prefer. Because we don't really win anything. It sounds a little bit too much like a prize. Oh, we have another supporter coming who's actually associated with the Oxford Buddhist Vihara now, which is nice. So this is the first little passage, and of course, as usual, you're very unlikely to find a community that contains only one or the other. Normally you're more likely to find a community that contains only the ignoble. It's quite unusual to find monasteries with stream winners, I have to say, even though that might be, I hope, not discouraging for people, but to me it's actually encouraging, because it just shows what a deep insight that really is, and how profoundly it would change a person. Because it's so easy these days to hear that everybody's a stream winner, and even other monastics have told me such and such came from the veins and they became a stream winner, and I'm like, So even people who are kind of very far on the path would never make that claim, either about themselves or about anyone else, because it's just not that easy to see. And someone can have very deep insights or some kind of profound life-changing experience, but we have to, as Ajahn Brahm says, wait for the dust to settle, because it's almost like an explosion in the mind. Something shifts, something's blown. View, right, is turned completely the other way around, and it can take time to see if that was really what kind of insight that is, and which fetters have been overcome. So Ajahn Brahm's told me it can take sometimes years, and you have to look and keep checking yourself out and see, okay, how is my conduct basically in line with what it would mean to be a stream enterer at this point. So it's not really the point that you are a something. I asked another of my teachers, and he put it really beautifully. He said something like, it's not that you kind of give yourself a label. It's more like a true practitioner has some profound experiences, but the question they would always ask is, what is still left to let go of? Which I think is much more beautiful, right, than what have I attained. It's actually the complete opposite. It's like, what is the still left to let go of? Because we're talking about coming out of suffering, right? We're not talking about becoming something, but we're talking about like actually letting go of our burdens, putting things down. So that's the important thing. So anything you'd like to say about any of that, or any questions from the room?
I always think it's useful the way the Buddha formulated the Four Noble Truths, that well, hopefully you can always recognize suffering, not necessarily, obviously. As opposed to I felt one with God, or I experienced unity or something like that. It's quite a little bit less defined, and I mean, who is to say? But suffering, you can imagine. You can say, oh, that hurt. But obviously not the case. There's plenty of people who think they're enlightened.
Too many, and to understand it completely, because there's a difference between this is suffering and I am suffering, because of that. To see this is suffering, and to see that, what are we adding on to it? Ajahn Brahm often says, like, much of suffering is what we add on to things. And sometimes, realizing that we're still resisting the suffering, that means we haven't really understood it. We're still kind of claiming it and thinking it's ours. I find that quite interesting, because if we can really understand suffering, there's actually no resistance anymore. At those times we can let go a little bit and just embrace it. It's like something falls away at that time.
Does that mean you're not suffering anymore then?
I guess you're not defining yourself by it in quite the same way. But it doesn't necessarily mean that, does it? It may mean that it slightly reduces. Like you said last week, you don't take it so seriously. You don't take yourself so seriously. Perhaps. Any comments, thoughts, questions, disagreements, things to add? Where are all the stream winners, though? Is it just because it's been long since the Buddha? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we don't know. I think there are a lot in Myanmar, personally. I know there's somebody here now from Myanmar, and presumably they've lived there a while and have probably visited many great monks there. People who've been to Thailand say there are some there too, but I've been to both countries, and personally I feel that Burma is much, well, one thing is it's less so-called developed. It's become less kind of it's less capitalistic, I suppose, and there's still a lot of practice going on. There's also a lot of suffering, a lot of oppression from the military regime, etc., and an enormous amount of faith in the Buddha's teachings. Maybe people are more inclined to really, really deeply practice because of that. Maybe it's also because they haven't been influenced so much from the so-called, let's just call it the outside of Burma world. And in the case of my own teacher, he ordained at the age of 5. And so even though a lot of people do that because of, obviously not through their own inclination, but their parents might send them to a monastery, there are some who really take to the meditation as a natural. And their sila has been impeccable their whole life. They've never had the entanglement of relationships. They've never had tried drugs or, any of those things. And they practice. And he was sitting in deep meditation at the age of 14 for 3 days at a time, and in deep samadhi. And later, did his studies, like they do these advanced degrees in Buddhism, Buddhist studies. and and had some breakthroughs in his practice through the Vipassana practice, actually, based on jhana, very deep samadhi. And I don't think although he is unusual, I don't think he's that unusual. I mean, he wasn't very well known outside of Burma because he didn't speak English, but it's a kind of word of mouth thing. And I think once you live there, you start meeting quite a few. Yeah. But you can never be 100%, right? But there's something about the level they're teaching at, and what they're embodying, and how they respond, always in line with the Dhamma, never kind of framing things in terms of a self, or never fixing you in terms of a self. It's very astounding, really. So I don't know that there aren't that many. I guess it's mainly because we don't have the conditions. I wouldn't say it's because, I mean, obviously if the Buddha's there, that's one massive condition, but it's the other conditions that we need as well, like the supportive conditions to practice, which is obviously less possible in a kind of neoliberal world. Yeah, we're so busy with work, with life, with stress. Where's the time to practice? You know, some of the suttas say if you don't have solitude, it's impossible to get, the deep samadhi, and as a result, it's impossible to get the right view. So we do have to have time. Also in Sri Lanka, in Buddhist countries where there are more people who have the chance to practice, I would say. And the other problem I just want to add, which came to my mind, it should have come earlier, is that there aren't enough bhikkhunis. That's another reason. Yes, it's been a long time since the Buddha, but where are all the bhikkhunis? If there were more, we'd have more, chances, isn't it? If there were more conditions to support bhikkhuni ordination, you'd have double the sangha. So we're relying only on the monk sangha generally. Not that lay people can't become enlightened, but it's about the lifestyle that people live and the devotion and commitment they have. And it's also about the renunciation as well. You have to let go of something. You're going to be letting go of more than your hair, and your clothing. You've got to be letting go of all sorts of ways that we identify, and that's incredibly challenging. So the renunciation aspect with monastics is definitely stronger. Yeah. What else have we there? You want to read out something? I was surprised when you said how. Sorry, I just went ahead. I'll let you do the next one. I was surprised you said how rare streamentries are within monastics. Yeah, again, I mean, it's not 100%. You can't assume that all monastics are stream winners. I think that, or streamenters. I think there are more who maybe think they are, perhaps, than who really are. I mean, Ajahn Brahmali would agree with that. He actually feels it's much rarer. I think the deeper you go into the suttas, and the more you practice, actually, the more you realize the depth and scope of the teachings, and what a huge, enormous thing that is. To be it's not a small thing. It's like you're destined to become fully enlightened. There's no turning back at all. You've completely destroyed wrong view. The view's perfect. You can never, again, view things in terms of a self. It's a big thing. And stream entries, in my experience, serve in massive ways. They have a huge impact on those around them. Generally. That's my experience. What do you think?
I don't know that many streamentries.
Yeah. I feel quite lucky that I know a few, like 2 or 3. But yeah, mostly I've met them in Asia, I have to say.
Well, there are people, but it seems that certain people have just the way they are, have an impact on your mind. If they were streamenters or not, I don't know, but there is something in their presence that makes you think twice, or makes you kind of go, what was that about? So Whether they were stream mentors or not, I don't know. But what I think of is like you could forever be pondering what someone else is and what they did, and how do you know that they're stream mentors?
Yeah.
I kind of have given up because there's a lot of gossip as well. I just kind of go by, first of all, what their reputation is. For a long time, have you heard of this person doing strange things, or do people, like their just, you could say the gossip, but the reputation about so and so over a long period of time. And in the end, if they're following, if they're in line with the Buddha's teachings, I guess, in line with the Buddha's teachings. And for me, there is something about people's presence. Whether they're a stream mentor or not, they could or couldn't be, they could be teaching in line with the Buddha. But if it helps me to follow the Dhamma and be inspired, and see the Dhamma for myself rather than have faith in them, see the Dhamma for myself clearly, regardless of whether they are a stream mentor or not, then wonderful, job done.
Yeah, please, if you can speak up as much as you can, that other people can hear you. So this is Olivia from the monastery.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree with that, because I think the problem can be that looking at stream winners could potentially become goal orientated, and even if I still have every day, I still have every moment, and every moment is still precious and special, even without any attainment. It's still a precious, beautiful thing. And I don't know whether I would be happier if I was a stream winner than I am now, because today, this moment can be precious, is precious.
Yeah. That's talking about one's own, that's, it's a different, it's kind of other subject, isn't it? It's like looking at ourselves and whether that matters to us, like whether thinking about stream winners can make the practice become kind of goal oriented for us. I mean, I do think that, some teachers, even Ajahn Brahm, would probably tell us off in a sense for having this conversation. In a sense, not completely. I think there's something valid about it. I think it's important to know what it is and what it isn't, so we don't overestimate or misjudge or go off on wrong tangents on the path. But at the same time, for me, I mean, when I meet somebody that inspires me, that I do sense their practice is really very much in line with the suttas, and it has effects that you would hope it would have. Like, these people are incredibly compassionate. They don't judge anyone. They embody kind of kindness. You feel very at ease, very unjudged, very unchallenged around them. It's just inspiring, and for me, that's incredible to have such kalyana mittas in my life, people that I can really trust to go to with my questions, and I know that their answers are going to be in line with the Dhamma, but it takes years to figure that out, right? And you also need to know for yourself by reading the texts and practicing yourself to check them out, whether they are in line with the Dhamma. So there's always an element of faith involved. But if you do meet such people, it's incredibly inspiring. And people are now asking about individuals which I haven't met, so I cannot possibly say. I would never say. I would only ever speak about people I know very closely, that I have no personal doubt about. But even then, I wouldn't say I know, and because no one can really know another person. So it's not about a more intense practice or determination. It's about the insight into the Four Noble Truths. Just to answer the question there. So someone says, the way you describe attaining stream entry is discouraging. I think there you mean that we we both think that it's quite rare, yes? Not the way it's attained, right? Is that right? The fact that we both think it's rarer than other people may think. I have to focus that my practice is about increasing my happiness. So maybe you're saying that okay, I'll finish this. I have to focus that my practice is about increasing happiness and the happiness of those around me. Absolutely. But what is understanding suffering? It's letting go of suffering. It's finding the path to happiness. It's just two sides of the same thing. I mean, as suffering diminishes, the happiness increases. So, you know, at times we cultivate the happiness. At other times we use that happiness in the mind to have a look at when we're not happy, you know, and to see the difference between the happiness that comes from within and the general state of mind we have when we're kind of craving or you've got your hand up, so let's come to you.
Please unmute.
Yes. So thanks. When I hear these conversations, it kind of comes across because I'm still very goal oriented. So part of wanting to do the practice is to attain something. And so when I hear this, it's like, ooh, and then I get discouraged. Sorry, I have to go. I have a customer.
Oh, you have to go. Okay. Okay. You can always come back and ask it again. Okay. Okay. I think we should move on from this pretty quickly, but because maybe it's interesting, but I want it to apply to us as well. Stream winners still have greed and hatred, but lessened. Correct me if I'm wrong. Not necessarily lessened actually until the next stage of once returning, when it's lessened. But I mean, the stage between the two is a little bit nondescript, undefined. So this is what I've learned from my teachers, right? The next stage is not an actual experience. Like stream winning is an experience that happens, and so is the third stage of non-returning. But the second enlightenment stage of once returning is more like, the greed and hatred lessening. So it's something that happens gradually over time, as opposed to suddenly. So it's not always easy to define exactly what that is. So what I would presume and sort of theorize is that once you've seen non-self, the greed and hatred will gradually get less intense. Maybe it'll still arise, but it won't last as long. For example, you'll quickly come to your senses because the view is right. But at first, those habits will still be there. So they're only actually overcome by the third stage of enlightenment. So they can still have, I don't know if you'd call it greed and hate though at that point, because they're very strong words. But it's the kind of the craving and the aversion would still be there to some extent. And then Eric is asking, is there a difference between being on the path to stream entry versus stream entry? And that is a definite yes. And it's mainly that the stream entry is an experience. It's something that happens. It's an insight that kind of blows your mind, so to speak. Whereas being on the path, it's, again, harder to define. But basically, somebody on the path is bound to get to stream winning. So you can't really know that for sure until you have got to the stream entry. You can't really know that you're on the path. So that's a hard one to define. But if you've got a lot of saddha, a lot of faith, a lot of confidence, if your sila is really strong, if you're practicing the path, if your view is pretty straight, at least at the preliminary level, and if you are able to still the mind and overcome the hindrances from time to time, then there's a chance you may be on the path. It's just that it has to continue, because for someone on the path, it's inevitable that they become stream winners. So if you keep falling off the path, then you weren't actually surely on the path. Does that make sense? Manori?
Yeah, I don't know the English words for these things. It's a kind of notes that I have done, like, about a stream entry. I've written No things can't be controlled, don't chase past and future, lives peacefully in the presence, no wrong views, less cravings, less ego. And then these three words, I don't know in English, Sakkaya Ditthi, Silabbata Paramasa, and Vichikicha, they don't have them.
That's the last one, I agree. The other ones, I think, are a little bit speculative, like it's not always the case or necessarily the case, and they're not enough to define stream entry. But the last three, yes. The Sakkaya Ditthi is the view of a self. So the view that there's something permanent in there, that there's like a person that things are happening to. You know, there's something that feels, or someone that feels, that perceives, etc., rather than there's just perception, there's just feeling, there's just consciousness. So the view of a self, Sakkaya Ditthi, and not just the body as not self, but the mind as well. This is one mistake people make when they overestimate. They say, well, I know the body's not self, and it's actually been wrongly translated as Sakkaya, like with body, and that's actually complete mistranslation. It doesn't mean you only know that the body is not self. It means you understand the whole thing is not self. It's a process, a conditioned process. Sakkaya Ditthi, and then Vichikicha is doubt. You can't have any doubt in the Buddha's teachings anymore. You can't have any doubt in the path anymore, because you've actually taken it to a very, very significant point where you've seen the Buddha's teachings for yourself. Right? You've seen paticca samuppada, you've seen dependent origination. The Buddha says one who sees dependent origination sees the Dhamma. You've seen the Dhamma. It's a massive, massive breakthrough. I mean, in the Dhammacakka Sutta, when Kondanya became a stream enterer, the earth shook, the devas rejoiced. I think more than just the earth shook, right? All the lokas shook. And they were rejoicing in all the different realms. I mean, it was a massive breakthrough, you know, and it was the first time the Buddha saw that the path can actually be taught to another and can have the effects for them too. So it's a huge, huge thing. So in that sense, they've seen the Dhamma. And then the last one that you mentioned was the belief, let's say, that through some kind of rites and rituals, one can purify the mind and become enlightened. So it's actually more common than we think. We all think, we know that's not true. But then people are very attached to their wrong views. Even secular Buddhists can be very dogmatic about their secular Buddhist views, which have a lot of confirmation bias in there, like a lot of just seeing what they want to see, like we all do, right? If we're still not overcome the 5 hindrances. So that one, yeah, although it looks like easier to overcome, I think a lot of the time we are attached to our particular habits, to our ways of doing things, to our views, etc. But obviously at the grosser level, it's, you know, believing that you don't really need to practice. You can just pray to the Buddha. You can, you know, bow in the right way, be the perfect nun on the outside, and, you know, you're kind of further on the path. That's not the case. It's about the view. So does that make sense? Okay. Do you want to read this one?
Oh, isn't that the idea of being a Dhammanusari or a Saddhanusari before becoming a stream enterer? Yeah, there is. Oh, sorry.
No, that's right.
Oh, okay. There is, but the point is, at what stage of your Saddha or Dhamma do you become a path? Do you become on the path? I actually heard a very nice simile that Bhante Sujato once gave of being someone who is Dhammanusari or Saddhanusari, was that riding a bicycle to the top of a hill, there's, you know, you're in the beginning, you're riding and you put a lot of effort in, and if you stop pedaling, then you're going to just, you know, slide down the hill. But there's a point where you've ridden so close to the top that you stop pedaling, but you still reach the destination. You still get to the top of the hill. And that is a Dhammanusari or a Saddhanusari, that you no longer have to put in that effort, but the momentum is there, that you get to the destination.
That makes sense.
So that is obviously very close to the top of the hill.
Yeah, very close to the top, because you can't go back.
Yeah.
The causes are so strong that it's inevitable that you'll attain to the streamentry. Yeah, and just for the people here, in case it wasn't translated, Dhammanusari means someone on the path whose wisdom faculty is strongest, the leading quality. And that is Saddhanusari is someone who's on the path, whose quality of confidence and faith and devotion to the Buddha's teachings is their main strength. It doesn't mean they don't have wisdom, but it means their main strength is the confidence. So that obviously means that they're going to continue. Yeah, the wisdom means you're going to continue too, because you can't unsee what you've seen. So both. Yeah, I like that. With the momentum, yeah, becomes inevitable. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. Is it a gradual or always a sudden experience? So I'd say it's both. A simile that Ajahn Brahm gives is like, you always see, for example, when somebody gets their degree, you see photos of them receiving their degree, and it's kind of sudden, they suddenly got it. But a lot of work went behind it, a lot of preparation, a lot of studies, and input over years and years and years, even right back to when they were little at school. So a lot went behind it. And sometimes in the suttas, it sounds as though the Buddha gave a teaching and then everyone got enlightened. But what they don't talk about is like everything that led up to that. So obviously it's a cultivation, it's a process, it's a gradual path, a gradual training of the whole Eightfold Path and strengthening every factor. But the stream entry itself is an experience, and not just, oh, I might be a stream entry, I'm not really sure. Like, yeah, it seems like I have less self-view now, but I must be a stream entry. It's not like that. It's something that completely turns your world upside down, your view upside down. And Ajahn Brahm always says it's not something you knew before. You might think you know impermanence, suffering, and non-self, but you actually don't until you see it from the perspective without hindrances, basically. Where delusion is temporarily overcome. And another reason for that is because as long as the hindrances are there, we will have this confirmation bias. We'll see what we want to see, what we expect to see, and we won't see what kind of we don't want to see, and that challenges our views, especially our view of self. That's why there can be quite a bit of fear, when you meditate and the practice starts to go deeper, and the sense of self is challenged into letting go of something that it held dear, that it cherished, and fear arises. So that's, so these things shake you. They're not things that just sort of maybe I'm a stream winner. If you are. It takes time maybe to kind of really figure out how many fetters have dropped away, but you also know if you're not, or you should know if you're not. Which is why I guess this conversation is valid, even though it might be a lot about goal, it could bring up people's conditioning or fears and anxieties around goal-orientedness. But I think it's important to, know the kind of landmarks on the path so that we don't get misled, and so that we don't stop our practice prematurely. Because that's a great tragedy, right? It's not about wanting to put people down and say, oh, they think they're a stream winner, but they're not, because it's not that. But it's like, if you already think that you're out of suffering and yet you're not, then you haven't actually experienced the potential, the depth of the potential that the Buddha's teachings can offer. So that's my concern when I hear that, or when I hear about the jhanas being talked about as very light states of piti sukha. That's the first jhana. You're just not getting the benefits that, are offered on the path. So that's why it's better to underestimate, if anything, and just keep going, because there's, imagine the state where you are completely at peace with absolutely everything. And there's no sense of self, there's no clinging, there's absolute utter contentment. That's enormous. So that is the potential that's offered, and we don't need to stop short of that.
More importantly, that you will never be reborn.
Yes.
Because even if you have enormous peace and tranquility, and for a long time, the potential to be reborn is what is
the seed is destroyed. Seed of craving is destroyed. That's right. Because you can, I mean, I think there are also people who have that such powerful samadhi, they might experience peace and contentment for years.
Aeons.
You hear about that.
Aeons.
Eons in the different realms.
Yeah.
But there was a Sri Lankan monk, a famous monk, he talks in one of the videos. I think it was a video that Ujagara was in, actually.
What is his name?
No, it was
I know his name.
Pamasiri in Sri Lanka, and he went through a phase of several years of practice where he thought he was finished the job. He thought he'd finished. He had no more greed, hate, or delusion, and he tells it very openly. And then one day he was walking on his path and he saw something that he thought was a snake, and he got very scared and he realized, oh gosh, I've made a mistake. I actually haven't done the job, and now I have to retrace my steps and find out where I went wrong. So that was like quite a shock to him, because he hadn't seen any greed, hate, or delusion for a very long time. So this is why I say it takes time to really know what's been overcome, you know. People might get misled into thinking that, they're further than they are. Yeah.
Do you know how he knew?
Can you speak up?
Do you know how he knew, or how to retrace his steps?
How to retrace his steps? I guess he had to go through and see where that fear was, why that fear was still arising, because fear can only arise when there's some kind of something to protect, some kind of sense of self. Like for somebody who's fully enlightened, there would be no attachment to or no delusion of a self to protect, so there wouldn't be any fear. So I guess he realized he hadn't fully overcome that. I mean, doesn't mean he wasn't a stream winner. He could have been, you know, he could have been fairly far on the path, but the fear, he wasn't an arahat, he wasn't fully enlightened. He probably wasn't an anagami either, for that matter, because they're too, like, aversion and craving are overcome. So how he did it, I mean, there is a little clip in that video I mentioned, but I don't think it's publicly available. But he definitely had something to say about mindfulness and his understanding of mindfulness that clarified a lot through that. And I forget what it was, honestly. I'd have to find the film. We could try and find it and watch it. Yeah. So Mukun's asking, was it Venerable Napane Pamasiri? I don't know his first name. Was it?
He's the very famous,
He's still alive.
Very famous. I don't know who Napane Pamasiri is, but this is the well-known Pamasiri.
Yeah.
The one who
still alive.
Can't remember the name of the monastery.
Doesn't matter. So Erica said, I just remembered I was reading the Majjhima Agama, that's the parallel to the Majjhima Nikaya, and getting to discuss the Dhamma Sakkacha is a support for making a breakthrough in the Dhamma. Absolutely it is. Yep. Hearing the Dhamma, first of all, absolutely fundamentally required. And getting to discuss the Dhamma is enormously helpful, which is why I like to have these sort of discussion groups, because it makes us think and try and clarify our understanding, even if we don't get quite at it. You can't quite get at it just through Dhamma conversation, but it can incite a certain enthusiasm to keep exploring, to keep practicing. So yeah, it's super helpful. Okay. You're welcome, Diana, to be late. It's done. Any more questions while we've spent almost the whole talk talking about stages on the path. Speculating to a degree, and also some of it informed. Anything else on those things? Does it matter? Is it important? Do people get inspired, or any thoughts? Is it inspiring to hear it's quite a deep stage and it's quite a profound shift, or is it disappointing and discouraging?
Just remember the aim.
Grace says it helps to remember the aim, just so that you can hear. Erica feels inspired. Kim, it's too remote. But we can see a gradual lessening of suffering, even in a moment, right? Diana.
And I can ask you to unmute, please.
Hi.
Hi, Diana.
Hi, Chanda.
Nice to see you.
You too. I found in my life of practice that striving for states has led to a lot of suffering, and knowing that the states are there makes it hard not to want to experience them. And when I do experience something extraordinary, then I want to experience it again. And then when I don't, I think I'm doing something wrong. And it's just, for me, going around and around of letting go of that craving, and then having it come up again and thinking it's under control, or I'm not really craving it, it just would be nice. So I wonder if you could speak a little about that process and how to be free of it. I don't know, like, it just, I have noticed it coming back.
Right. Yeah, my first thought when you said it actually was like, it's that desire, in a sense, it's like noticing it and then kind of not wanting it, right? Wanting to be free of it, wanting to be rid of it. And yet actually, I think it's very, very valuable to see that. I mean, if we didn't talk about these things, because the Buddha obviously did, then would we have the chance to see that striving for goals and attainments? I mean, we can't pretend there aren't any. So if it uncovers our clinging and our kind of striving, then yeah, it's showing us something about ourselves. Maybe there's a slightly wrong angle that we're coming at it with, rather than just taking the positive side, which could be the inspiration. We're also, getting the craving coming up, which is natural, as long as we're not, even anagamis, I guess. Even anagamis, they still have not attachment, but they still have this delighting in jhanas and things like that. Even though they know it's not as sublime as nirvana, they still have that, So it's a very long process. And I don't think we should criticize ourselves for that or feel that we better not talk about it because of that. I mean, it might be wise not to dwell on it and to maybe listen to Dhamma in general that focuses on the process and not the goal. But I think it's very valuable that you're seeing that process. I don't know if that adds something. Do you still have your hand up to say more? Canda, can you unmute Diana?
I muted myself while you were speaking, and then I couldn't unmute. Yeah, I did a retreat online a couple of years ago with a teacher who accepts light jhana as jhanas, and he was like, "Oh yes, you're having that's this jhana, and I got kind of happy about that, not puffed up or anything, but just like, oh good, I'm getting somewhere with this, like I was looking at it in the wrong way. But then I talked to my other teacher who and he's like, well, I don't really think it is. And I just kind of got so dejected, like I thought I was getting somewhere, now I'm not getting anywhere. And it kind of put me off the whole wanting to sit, like, and that's just an old program of attainment based
right.
living, basically, like we're going for this goal, now that goal, no, and you go back to the beginning. It's like I had to return to go, do not pass go, do not collect a jhana. So anyway, that
I mean, this is the danger in teaching stages, I have to say, especially in misteaching stages. I mean, which is why I think Ajahn Brahm's so skillful, because he doesn't dilute them, but he does talk about them as stages of letting go. And he also really very much focuses on the process and on the kindness and on making every moment a moment of kindness. So to me, it's like it actually undermines goal or striving for anything. And the irony with that, isn't it, is that if you had got benefit from that, you would, if it's genuine benefit, whether someone says it's jhana or not, so what? It's still benefit.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Why do we need to have a name on it?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
to see that can happen though, because it also shows me how tempting it really is to go to these teachers, because it does give a boost. But can we get that boost anyway somehow? By being content with little. I mean, probably not that little. Mukund, can we?
Mukund, can I ask you to unmute, please?
Yes, thank you so much. So to me, I think the point you just made about thinking of it as stages of letting go is actually useful, because then it says something about what do I need to do next, or what do I need to focus on. But to be very honest, the rest of it felt like a distraction. I mean, if it doesn't make a difference, I mean, if it's just the next step, you need to anyway take the next step, right? Whatever it is, irrespective of where you are. So to the extent it clarifies the next step, it's very, very helpful. Otherwise, it feels like a distraction, to be honest.
I know what you mean. That's what I was also cautious about. It's like, are we just talking about it for intellectual kind of entertainment? I mean, obviously, it's good to be clear on what these things are, but yeah, it can kind of miss the point of the steps we have to take now. And just to bring it even closer to home, I'd say forget about the next step, forget about the next thing you have to do. It's more, you know, what can I let go of now, right now? So it's always bringing it home to this moment. Yeah. So what else was there at the top? Just so we don't miss any of these comments. So I think that's Minori. Ah, okay. Leon. Sorry, I don't mean to read names. So someone says, inspiring to keep in mind. Someone else says it can be a bit intimidating, but it helps to remember to stay with the practice, I think. Yay. I think so. Can. Yes, it's inspiring. There are people who are losing themselves, their delusions, in the present day, encouraging to carry on one's practice. Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. I find it amazing that there are such people, because when I kind of contemplate what it really means, it's just unbelievable, actually. It's not a small thing. You realize this when you meet such people, because there's something extraordinary. It can feel remote, but one hopes that being on the path now will help us on it as we move through samsara in the long run. Yeah. The Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi says there's only two things you need for enlightenment: to start walking on the path and to continue. Which is great. It really brings it back to the basics. So yeah, imagine how it would feel if we didn't even have a path. My goodness. I would be dead. It's inspiring, but more questions come up in the mind. Self-view is stronger comparing to other fetters. Yeah. Attachment to rites and rituals or doubt about the Dhamma. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, right view is like a big deal. That's the first factor of the path. It's a path factor, right? The others aren't path factors. So yeah, the self-view. And, you know, my main practice used to be on contemplating impermanence, but now I have a feeling that working on undermining the sense of self is actually even more effective to make that breakthrough, which is why the emphasis on process, because process is one of the things that can undermine the sense of there being something like essential, solid, right? If things are just in a process, cause and effect, that starts to get at the sense of self. It starts to undermine it. So yeah, the way we approach the practice, you know, not me that wants to attain something, but a kind of noticing cause and effect in one's practice, putting the causes in place and waiting for the results, just allowing the results to happen in their own time.
Oh. It does make me a little nervous knowing how difficult it is to attain stream entry, considering how rare human birth is, and that uncertain that we will be able to continue working on this path in the next rebirth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was the Buddha's intention. So you'd say, I need to I need to shave my hair, put on the robes, or at least, you know, make more time to meditate. Yeah, I think he said that a lot, huh? How rare the human birth is. True. What do you think?
true. And even though we think, I have so much faith in the Dhamma, I will never leave this. I can't imagine anything else other than this. In truth, we don't have faith until we are a stream enter.
Not unshakable.
Not unshakable faith. So
correct.
I would like to think that in my next life, I will be nothing except wanting to walk this path. But that is shakable.
We have a mixed karma.
Yeah, we have mixed karma. Yeah, that's a nice way of saying it. We have mixed karma.
Yes. But the more you practice now, the more you incline, the more likely you'll continue.
Yeah, that's right.
It's true, actually. I've become a bit more positive, like that, if I'm practicing now, I'll definitely be practicing again in the next life. But actually, we don't want a next life, and you can't take it for granted. I mean, anyone who's not a stream winner or a stream enterer, I don't know why I keep saying winner. I saw it written. Stream enterer, maybe I want to win it. You can still go to the lower realms. So,
but I mean,
but in the end,
the only thing we can do is keep practicing. So either way,
I think in the end it all comes out okay. I hope I'm not too positive, but even Devadatta, he did really awful things, like tried to kill the Buddha, which is unbelievably major. So he actually basically destroyed his chance of stream winning in that life. Was someone else who, Ajatasattu, he killed his father. He destroyed his chance, and the Buddha actually gave him a talk and said if he hadn't killed his father, he would have got stream entry there and then. But tough, he'd done it. But in the case of Devadatta, and no one here has tried to kill the Buddha or tried to kill their father, I hope. But in the case of Devadatta, the Buddha's cousin, the Buddha actually said that in a future life he'll be a Buddha, right? He'll be a Buddha or a Pachaka Buddha.
I think, he'll go.
I think he'll be enlightened anyway. He said he'll be a Buddha, didn't he? In a future life.
There's
Was that in the Sutta?
Pachaka Buddha, I think.
Because there's such mixed karma in all of us. I mean, I personally think if we're here having access to the Dhamma,
there's something already.
It's incredible. How many people in this world have this? I know this is not the only Sutta class online, but still, it's available to everyone in the world. There's only 28 of us. Or actually 30. So it's pretty amazing, that we actually have this much interest and want to hear it, despite the way it challenges the sense of self. Challenges it in both ways. Like either we don't, want to hear it, or we actually don't like the fact that it shows us that we have a sense of self. But we still listen anyway. That's pretty cool.
I have to say, Ajahn Brahm is very positive. He says, you've heard the Dhamma, you can't forget it now.
He does.
You can't forget this now.
I think at a certain point it's true.
You can't unsee it.
But the thing is, we don't know for sure. I mean, we might be on the path, any of us here, but until we actually get the stream entry, basically don't be complacent. Just keep practicing. Don't worry about it. Do it chilled. Manori, do you want to add something?
Just one little simile that I heard a couple of days back in a Dhamma talk. I thought it'll be really nice for everybody. It says, so imagine there's this person who's cutting a forest and trying to make this little road to go from one place to the other place. And they cut, and after a while, forget about it, and then goes back. And then so when he cuts, he'll remove the huge trees, small trees, boulders, all that, and very, very carefully cut it to a place. And then he forget about it after a couple of years, come back, and then the forest has grown, but it is easier to cut to the previous place because there are no big boulders, there are no big trees. So you get into that place, and after that you continue. So what the simile says, whatever you have done in the path, so later in a couple of lifetimes, maybe you come back to this, you hear this, and you sit in the cushion, probably you'll get into a state that you have, come up, you worked, easily. And after that, you continue wherever you stopped. So I thought it was quite encouraging, because I was kind of feeling the same as Casey, like, this is so scary that the next bhava person can totally do a U-turn kind of thing. So when I heard this, it was quite encouraging.
And actually, any way of looking, it's just a kind of perspective, so maybe it's better to take the ones that do encourage, because the whole purpose of the discussions, the whole purpose of the practice and is to encourage ourselves, isn't it? It's to like inspire, to give us something to inspire us to live really beautiful lives aligned with the Dhamma as much as we can. So yeah. And sometimes it might be good to also think, actually, I could do a bit more, Let's not be complacent here. I don't think the Buddha means to terrify us necessarily, because it's not a fear-based religion. But take whatever perspective really helps you to feel inspired. Yeah, it's beautiful simile. Yeah, very helpful. I mean, the Buddha says, right, whatever you frequently reflect and ponder upon becomes the inclination of your mind. So that means if you frequently reflect and ponder upon Dhamma, you're going to keep doing it. It's a habit, like everything else. You make a habit. If you meditate every day, you're more likely to do it the next day. If you miss one, you're probably more likely to notice the detrimental effect, The more we get inclined to happiness, the less likely we are to start kind of plundering it by doing things that obscure that happiness or cause a decline in our virtue. You want to go for this?
Oh. A tangential point. The Buddha mentioned that the path is beneficial in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end. What is the
Pali, I guess.
Pali original quote, and where is it from? Is this the same as the idea of the Dhamma being Upekkhā? So I know it now.
Kalyana, isn't it?
Yeah, Kalyana, Majjhima Kalyanang. And
Patima or something. Yeah, beneficial in the beginning.
Yeah, Kalyanang is the word. And so
yeah. Where is it? It's quite common, isn't it? But I can't really remember where it is. Yeah, check on Sutta Central. That's a good way to get out of it. Is it the same as the idea of the Dhamma being Upekkhā? Slightly different, isn't it? Upekkhā is like, isn't it leading inward or leading onward? Some people say leading onward, but I always think it means leading inward. I just like that better. It makes more sense to me. No, apparent here now is a Sanditiko. Yeah, Upekkhā is like leading onward. I mean, in a sense, yes, like it's a progressive path, we can say. I mean, I like how Ajahn Brahmali puts it. He says that it's like a gradual training in ever-increasing bliss or something. I'm probably misquoting, but something like a gradual refinement of wholesome happiness. I like that. So in that sense, yeah, like the beginning you could see as having confidence and keeping the precepts, that gives a certain kind of happiness, but then you take it further with the sense restraint, that gives a more subtle and stable kind of happiness. And then you have like the happiness of being aware, being mindful, having energy in the mind, and then you have the happiness of like what's the other happinesses? You have the happiness of even before jhanas, just with the piti sukha, the kind of wholesome joy and bliss that can arise in the body. And then you have the tranquility, then you have the real strong sukha, which is like deep contentment and more ease. And then you have the happiness of peace, like the stillness of samadhi, which is deeper still. And then the highest happiness is like, well, even before that, there's the happiness of wisdom, when defilements like actually get completely undercut. That's a deeper happiness.
The Kalyana.
Yeah, Majjhima Kalyana. Anyway, and then thank you, Adrian. Yay. And then the happiness of Nibbana. So in that sense, it's good in the beginning, middle, and end. Sean.
Sean, may I ask you to unmute, please?
Hello, yeah. I just thought I'd share an experience I had this week where had a lot of suffering. Something happened, and I didn't know how to deal with the situation. And I was listening to some talks from Ajahn Brahmali. I was meditating a lot with a lot of metta. I was using the online Venerable Chanda's online metta meditations, which really helped because I was quite caught in my head. And then I looked at the suttas in terms of what to say to people, the right speech, and it all just kind of came together. Like, obviously there was still suffering there, but in the past I would have reacted much worse, much less skillfully. And I just thought I'd share that experience because, you know, we're talking about things that, for me at least, are extremely far off. But to me, it doesn't really matter at this point because I've got so much benefit from that. And then for example, one thing was I wrote an email, and I wrote it in a very thought out way. And I was worried. So when I sent it, I wasn't worried about the reply. And when I got the reply, it was a nice reply back, and it deflated what could have been a worse situation. So it was just a really nice experience where everything came together, really.
Yeah. So you said first you listened to the Dhamma talk, then the metta meditation, then the suttas, yeah?
Yeah, all of it. So it's like everything working. And yeah, all really helped.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Here's the thing, we have to look at our own lives, don't we, and see like how does it help us?
Yeah.
And actually, you say you're far away. We don't know, and it's not even a much point kind of trying to figure that out. Actually, it is all about, you know, how can we apply it right now? You don't know how close or far you are. I mean, from what anyway? We don't even know from what, right? Because we don't really know how it'll be. So, yeah.
I also remember that it is not it is not a place you're going to, but it's uncovering what is already there. Like it is the purifying your mind, as opposed to going to a place that you don't, you know, it's removing the hindrances. So it's
Right.
Your mind is already pure. It's just covered up. It's covered up by the hindrances.
To point. Yeah. I know what you're saying. It's a letting go of what's obscuring our happiness, let's say. Yeah. So on that note, it's close to the end of the session, and totally different from any thought I might have had. I didn't have any plan because I hadn't opened the book, but I didn't expect that we'd talk all about those sorts of challenging things. In a way, challenging, right? Because in a way, we're all a bit like, we can have a sense, we can have an understanding of what the Buddha's saying, but really these things have to be experienced. And I think that's, you know, that's the important thing, but hopefully it can whet our appetites to and not think of them as something that's kind of obscure and unattainable. I mean, in some countries, even Buddhist countries like Sri Lanka, apparently people think you can't become enlightened in these days.
Actually,
a lot of people think that.
It flipped.
Did it flip? And now they think everyone can.
Yes.
Right. But that's just a reaction, isn't it? So neither's true. Here we are. We'll read the last quote. Here we go. From Erica. Thank you. Just like the baby calf who's just been born, but urged on by its mother's lowing, still managed to cross the Ganges to safety, are the mendicants who are followers of principles, or in other words, Dhamma followers, or followers by faith, confidence. They too, having breasted Mara's stream, whose translation is this? Will safely cross over to the far shore, Ajahn Sujata. Yeah. Oh yeah, mendicants. I should have recognized. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. That's really nice. Just little baby cows. Yeah, that's really nice. Oh, okay. So whoever would like to give the little words at the end, and please unpin us and pin yourself, don't forget.
Yeah, I think I want to start with the bad news. In Buddhism, you cannot buy yourself stream entrance, but you can still make good deed by giving dana or donations for the vihara we have now in Oxford, and which is more and more active and full of people. Also, Venerable Canda and her guests are dependent on food. So there is an afar and ahar for all food on the all hands for food and for
I'll write it in, Gunther.
Yeah. If you're interested in joining these WhatsApp groups, you can email team@anukampaproject.org. Yeah, so there is money donations or help and food donations, dana, which are needed to establish more and more our vihara now in Oxford, our vihara now. Thank you.
I'm trying to pin ourselves. I think I did it. I think I pinned Gunther and now pinned us. So hopefully that worked. Thank you very much. And I'm sure there's something else I should say. I mean, one thing I guess is that Ajahn Brahmali is coming, and there's still a lot of places in the talk. So please sign up so that we don't worry and make thousands of posters and get everyone to circulate it like crazy. So please sign up. And if you have volunteer time to come to the events and to be on the tickets, please let us know as well. You can write to team@anukampaproject.org. And also, there's a chance to offer a weekly supermarket shop. I'm not sure if Gunther mentioned that or not, like we used to do with the online group. So that will really help us out. We get a vegetable box, but the supermarket weekly one, obviously, taking it in turns and contributing any what you can will be super, super helpful. And you'll practice. And it's just very wonderful to see you all from every corner of the world. So thank you for coming. And thank you to Venerable Upekkhā for being here. Many of you might not have met her before, but now you have. And it's really wonderful to have your input in these groups as well as your presence in the vihara. It's very wonderful. So do come down and meet us. I know some of you are. We're getting kind of tight for space, it's true. So, and also the guest rooms are pretty full. So, but we still hope to see you for dana now and then. All right. So please take care and make every moment count. Shall we unmute you?